Hello guys, welcome to another video starring the Fat Man Welder, yours truly. And today's video is going to be a direct continuation of the last video. And in the last video we modified our intercooler, so we've got our separate end tanks, we've got our bypass valve on there. So what's new from last video is we've got a new revised supercharger bracket on there. I'm going to do a quick separate video on that at some point this week to sort of explain the changes we've gone through, because I did want to continue that video, but we're now on the 4th revision of the bracket, and there needs to be a slight 5th revision on this bracket to make it work the way we need it to do. But I've stuck the bracket on, I've got the supercharger bolted on because I'm going to need that on there so I can work with the outlet of the supercharger. And we can also see the results of moving the intercooler forward, how much more space that has given us, so that's worked out really well. So we're going to start off with arguably the most easiest pipe of the three to make, which is going to be the cold side. So we need to go from that piece there to our throttle body. Now if you remember, our throttle body is a drive-by-wire Bosch unit from an Astra VXR, just because Astra's got a load of surplus of them, so it just made sense to use it. And because we used to do quite a few Vauxhall top hat kits back in the day, I've got a few of these old top hat flanges lying around, so my current plan is to bolt the flange on. We'll cut the leg of this elbow down and we'll just sort of point it in a general direction of this corner here, make it nice and simple. Hopefully we can just get a 90-degree bend in there just by extending the ends on it with a silicone joiner either end. So yeah, we'll start with this. I'm going to go cut the leg down on this straight away because I want it short as possible, and I want to make sure it clears all of the breather kit, the catch tank hoses. So yeah, we'll just go obviously do a typical bandsaw montage, because I know you all love them.
I'm losing my mind, falling away, I can't see straight. I'm losing my mind, I'm falling away, I can't see straight. I'm losing my mind, losing my mind.
So we've taken the throttle body off, we've got our top hat flange, we've just had to drill these holes out to a bigger size, because these are usually drilled out for M6 bolts and we need M8. So yeah, we drilled it out to M8. And then we've got our 45 on there with a cut leg, and we've got a nice bit of clearance there above the catch tank hoses. So next port of call is I've got a 90-degree silicone joiner here that I need to trim down. So we'll go do that, and then we'll go get a 2.5-inch 90 out of stock, and we'll kind of mock up the next part.
Losing my mind, falling away, I can't see straight. I'm losing my mind, losing my mind, I'm falling away, I can't see straight. I'm losing my mind, losing my mind.
So we've got a silicone trim down there, we've got our silicone joint at the top here. I have not welded this elbow to the flange yet because I want to make sure I've got it all lined up properly. So yeah, this is a typical 2.5-inch alloy bend, and we need to extend the legs. So this side we need to extend it about 4 inches, and then this side we need to extend it about 6.5 inches. So 4 inches, 6.5 inches. Right, so scrap that. I've just about mocked up that 2.5 inch and I realised it does look pretty shit. It did a job, but it just looks really out of place. So I've rummaged through all my offcut bins and I've managed to find these two 45-degree bends. And I just think that is going to look and flow much nicer than having this 90-degree bend which just sort of comes up here into no man's land. So I'm going to use these two 45-degree bends, but if you can sort of see, they're not quite long enough, and I really do not want to put another joiner in there. I'd rather have that as all one solid pipe. Now putting a small piece in there is going to look pretty shit in my opinion, so this is a piece that I've just cut for that over there. and I'm going to stick that in there like that. So I'm going to trim both these elbows down to make them shorter, and then I'm going to put that long piece in there, and that's just going to look much nicer. So yeah, now I know what I'm doing. I'll crack on with that now. And there we go, wouldn't you agree, that looks loads better than having this thing all the way up here. That flows much nicer. So not just in terms of actual flow, but you know, from a aesthetic point of view, that looks loads better. So I'm happy with that. So I'm going to quickly just mark up the piece into the flange there, so I can get that tacked up. I'll go and get this aluminium pipe welded up fully. We'll come back, we'll just make sure I've got that tacked up in the right place, and if I have, we'll then go get that welded up.
Falling away, I can't see straight. I'm losing my mind, losing my mind. I'm falling away, I can't see straight. I'm losing my mind, losing my mind. I'm falling away, I can't see straight. I'm losing my mind, losing my mind. I'm falling away, I can't see straight. I'm losing my mind, losing my mind. Falling away, I can't see straight. I'm losing my mind, losing my mind. I'm falling away, I can't see straight. I'm losing my mind, losing my mind. Falling away.
There we go, that's the cold side. All buttoned up, hose clamps on, happy with that. It's come out beautifully. So next, we now need to tackle one of the two hot side pipes. So I've decided we're going to start with the Supercharger outlet to the intercooler inlet. Now, not gonna lie, I've been sat here in my chair for half hour just figuring out which route I want to go with this outlet. I had a completely different idea this morning to what I've got now. I've kind of built myself into like a little hole here by probably prematurely putting this end tank on the intercooler, because it could have been done in such a different way which would benefit. A little bit easier to do what we've got to do next, but I'm going to sort of deal with the cards that I've drawn myself, and I think I've come up with a solution. So you'll remember this part, which is our first functional part that we did on the Shapeoko when we first got it. These are a couple of aluminium cast elbows that I've got. We've got a short radius and we've got a long radius, and then my plan is to cut kind of like a plenum out of some sheet alloy on the Shapeoko here. Then we'll bring out a box about 60mm, and then we'll weld this on the side of it and sort of loop it back under itself. So I've just taken the intercooler off just to sort of give you a better idea of what I'm planning to do. So this is our flange, we've got bolted to the Supercharger now. We're going to build like a little plenum box on there, and then what we're going to do is we're going to put the outlet on just like that. So we are a bit close to the wastegate, but we've got enough air gap there that I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue. Plus I think at some point we're going to have to look into getting a thermal barrier company on board, and at least getting like the manifold and all the downpipe and all of these pipes all ceramic coated or cerakoted, just obviously keep intake temperatures down. So yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do, is build a plenum box and weld that on there. So we'll just go over to the masturbation station. We're going to draw up a little box plenum, we'll cut it out in a Shapeoko, we'll get it on the folder and get it folded, and over to the welding bench and get it welded. So yeah, lovely montage coming your way.
falling away. I can't see straight. I'm losing my mind, losing my mind. I'm falling away. I can't see straight. I'm losing my mind, losing my mind. I'm falling away. I can't see.
So that came out kind of how I imagined, which is good, I guess. So the next thing is we need to put our elbow into there, but as you can see, that's not going to work. So what I'm going to do is hopefully cut a wedge out about where my finger is, and then that will line up with that, and then we can start coping all that out. That's the plan anyway. So let's go see how we get on. Right, so I've cut it. Unfortunately, this sack of shit didn't record it, and I'm not doing it again because it was sketchy AF. So anyway, I've cut this at a 60-degree angle. It was 58 degrees, but 60 degrees was easy to do. And the whole idea is now is we're going to graft it onto the side of here. So it's about nice. Might just need to sort of do a bit of grind work at the bottom. So what we're going to do is we're going to quickly get a hole saw and just give us an access point there. We'll weld this on the outside, and then we'll go inside with a carbide. We'll get the whole board out, and then we'll just weld in between the inside of here and the inside of the elbow to make sure we've got a nice strong weld.
I can't see straight. I'm losing my mind, losing my mind. I'm falling away. I can't see straight. I'm losing my mind, losing my mind. I'm falling away. I can't see straight. I'm losing my mind, losing my mind.
And there we go, that actually come out as I kind of pictured, so hopefully this makes sense. So we've got this little funnel plenum bowl of a supercharger, and I'm hoping that will do a good enough job to funnel the airflow through this elbow here. So let's go get it bolted back to the engine and let's see how it looks on the car.
I'm falling away. I can't see straight.
And there we go, beautiful, it works. It's not the way I had intended it to work in my head, but obviously with me getting a bit ahead of myself in the intercooler, that's the cards we've been dealt. And we've actually managed to save a bit of room here, so we've actually got a much bigger gap, air gap there in between this pipe and the wastegate dump. And there we go, we've got absolute buckets of room there, absolute buckets of room, so I'm dead happy with how that's come out. So now we've got clearance, now we know what space we've got to deal with. I just now need to decide on whether to weld another cast alley elbow on there or just use 2 silicone joiners. I mean, I don't dislike silicone, but I hate cheating. I mean, that's really done my nutting. I always like to use a straight coupler when I can, and I hate using 90s just because I prefer to have as much metal work in there as possible. And having 2 big silicone joiners, especially elbows, it's a weak spot. And you know, if both of them split and we only carry one to spare, that's the weekend over. So whereas at least if a straight joiner was to break, we could technically patch it up with a bit of duct tape and some whatever we had lying around. So I just kind of need to decide what I want to do. I'm kind of swaying towards welding this elbow on the bottom there, so we've only got to carry 1 hose. So if 1 hose was to split, we've got a hose in the van as spare. So I'm going to go home now. It's not the end of the video, but I'm going to go home. I'm going to sleep on it, and then in the next clip I'll have told you what I'm doing. So see you on the other side.
The next day.
So I've slept on it, I've decided what I'm going to do. So we're going to take this cast alloy elbow, we're going to weld it onto the bottom there to point it that way, and then we're going to use a silicone 90-degree elbow to then attach it to the intercooler. So let's get that off, let's get that welded on, and then we can get on to the final one, which is the turbo to the intercooler.
I'm falling away. I can't see straight. I'm losing my mind, losing my mind, falling away. I can't see straight. I'm losing my mind, losing my mind, I'm falling away.
And there we go, happy days. I've just had to move and clock this fitting for the alternator. It was sort of pointing directly towards the camera and it would have impeded the silicone joiner that's going to go on here. So, but luckily it's got a couple of clocking teeth on there. Not sure if you can see on the camera or not. So it is designed to be able to obviously fit in different directions. So that's worked out pretty nicely. So all we need to do now is get the intercooler back on there and trim the silicone joiner to suit. Right, so we need to tackle the top hose here, which is in between the turbo and the bypass valve, but we also need to have a little T section in there that will be the inlet, the air intake inlet for the supercharger. So we're going to try and do this part first. So I've got a couple of short silicone joiners, one there, one for you. Yeah, so I've actually got the turbo loosened at the moment, so we can get this into a position that's going to allow us to get a bit of metal between the two. So I've just been and got these out in the offcuts bin. These are 2-inch 1D bends, 45s, and hopefully we can use these to at least give us an idea of where we're aiming for. So actually that's not too bad, that's not too bad. Let's pop that in there that way. Oh, there we are, look. So I think all we need to do now is go get a fresh 45 out of stock and just cut it with a slightly longer leg, and I think we'll be spotty dog there. So right, let's go cut a piece of material. I'll be back in a second.
A few moments later.
Boom, I think that is going to do the job just nicely. So let's get this marked up and let's get this tacked up. In fact, to tell you what, we're just going to weld this fully because I don't think we're going to get any better than that. The downside is stainless, not alley, so that's obviously the weight issue. But I want to get this done today, and I don't really want to wait a couple of days to get some specialist bends in. So yeah, let's get this off. Let's get it welded, and then we can get on to our little TP section we've got to do here. And there we go, that is looking sick. That is step 1 of step 2 of that pipe. But before we go any further, let's just do a quick fitment check with the grill. And as I already knew, we're going to have to trim some of this grill out and maybe some of the top there to clear that pipe. But it is what it is. I'm happy with that. I suppose actually while we're here, we best make sure we clear the bonnet.
I'm falling away, I can't see straight. I'm losing my mind, losing my mind.
There we go, we've got some decent clearance over the top. But I have to admit, we are touching right there. But luckily, it's a bit of the skin that we can cut out. So I'm going to count that as a win. Right then. So now we need to get on to part 2 of this little top hose here. And what we need is to have like a little T, sort of like that, going into the side of it. And then that'll be our air intake for the supercharger. Now, this is experimental, so don't go down in the comments telling me I'm doing it the wrong way, because it has crossed my mind to take that pipe to the air filter. But if we do that, we can't compound charge, and it would probably mean this bypass valve is a bit useless. So if I need to change it back in the future, it's not the end of the world. I can soon machine up a boss to adapt that to a barb, so I've got a beaded section, and then I can redo this pipe, because it literally took me another 10 minutes. So we're going to go down this route, because this is the route I've committed to. So we're going to take this little offcut we got here, we're going to cope it so it goes over this little 2-inch, and then we'll put a beaded section on there, we'll weld it on there, and then Bob's your uncle.
Losing my mind, I'm falling away. I can't see straight. I'm losing my mind, losing my mind.
And there we go, one pipe with a little chode sticking out of it. So I hope that made sense of how we fabricated that. So we're just going to quickly put this back on the car, and then we can get on with part 3. Right, so the next part is modifying the Supercharger inlet. So obviously we're going to join it there with a silicone joiner. Now you may remember seeing this in a very early video, I can't remember. And it roughly sat there like so. Hope that sort of makes sense. And the idea was, before we went down this route, was the turbo fed the supercharger directly, but obviously we're diverting the airflow to favour the intercooler. So what I need to do now is just sort of unpick what I've done here, put it up, and obviously get it to meet into the silicone joiner here. So should be a pretty simple job. The downside is I've got to take the downpipe off and the screamer possibly. So let's get all that taken off so we can get cracking on the next thing.
Falling away, I can't see straight. I'm losing my mind, losing my mind. I'm falling away, I can't see straight. I'm losing my mind, losing my mind. I'm falling away, I can't see straight. I'm losing my mind, losing my mind. I'm falling away, I can't see straight. I'm losing my mind, losing my mind.
And there we go, that is the Supercharger inlet all welded up, looking nice. And that concludes this video and all of the plumbing. So as I'm sure you can see, the car looks incredibly different to how it has been for the majority of this video, and there's a reason why, and that will be in a future video, possibly the next video during the week. But yeah, that's going to be it for this video. So I hope you enjoyed following through the process of fabricating all the intercooler pipe work and the thought process behind it and our techniques. So yeah, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video very shortly.